Well, thank you for having us in your home again today. We have one of those really exciting presentations in the Gospel of Mark, an absolute illustration of the beauty of faith. And I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to go to our picture. This picture is from the Pacific coast. And on the right-hand side on that, it looks like a bluff is a cave you can walk right into. And just you have the morning fog that is just so normal out there on the Pacific, and the sun is coming up. One thing about being on the West Coast, when the sun comes up, it's got to get a little bit higher because of all the mountains around. But it is just starting to warm up on that morning. Thank you, Sherry, for just that wonderful, refreshing moment. We've got some exciting things to talk to you about. There is something new at Screaming Rock Ministries. Now, I'm going to ask you to write down screamingrockministries.com, and I want you to go on and check out our new website. Just got put up a day or so ago. Hope you enjoy that. We'll be making a few changes on it, but we're excited about it. And on there, of course, you'll see our new logo. That's on this screen right now. Of course, that new website. Now, all of our messages are on there, including a series on the book of Revelation. If you scroll to the bottom of that web page, there is a list of items, and down at the bottom it says bookstore. Now, if you click on that, we have partnered with another ministry, and they have some absolutely wonderful and astounding books just on the topic of faith. And I think you will be richly, richly blessed if you get a chance to go to that bookstore. And there's also a page you can send in prayer requests to Screaming Rock Ministries. We have individuals that are willing to pray for those requests. So if you would send those in, I look forward to having the team just take time to pray for those. And we have people from all over that join in on that prayer. And we just know that God loves to hear and answer prayers. So please use that if it's convenient for you. And you'll see some of the other things we're about in our ministry. Well, thank you for that. I need to jump into our story because this is an incredibly great story. It is subtitled, The Woman Who Had Faith. And in this sense, it's extraordinary. All right, jumping into our story. It is in Mark chapter 5. We're going to begin with verse 21 because this is a story embedded in the middle of another story. It goes like this. When Jesus had crossed over again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him. And so he stayed by the seashore. One of the synagogue officials named Jairus came up and on seeing him fell at his feet. Now, that concept of falling at the feet of Jesus is what you would do if you were in the presence of a king or a prince and you had the privilege of an audience. You would go in and just fall at their feet, and that would be an extraordinary recognition of one's position, honor, and authority. So Jairus is acknowledging that Jesus is this extraordinary man, and he has a question. It goes like this. And implored him earnestly, saying, my little daughter is at the point of death. Now, I want you to know that Mark is the only one of the three Gospels that helps us understand that this is a very young girl. Continuing on, please come and lay your hands on her so that she will get well and live. Now, that's a profound request. It says that Jesus went off with him, and a large crowd was following him. And I have put emphasis on this last phrase, and pressing in on him, pressing in. In other words, this is a crowd in which people are shoulder to shoulder in, and they're pressing in. They want to get close as they possibly can to Jesus. And it says, a large crowd. Now, Mark is a witness to this. He is the one who's walking in this crowd. He sees it unfolding right in front of him. Verse 25, here's our story for today. A woman who had a hemorrhage for 12 years. Now that meant that hemorrhaging, she had been bleeding that could not be stopped. And for how long? 12 long years. Now, if you understand the challenge there and the complications of that, think about nutrition and health to try to keep up if you're constantly losing blood. Okay? And this is the kind of blood that a woman loses. So I want you to think of 12 years of her challenge. And it reads, and had much, endured much at the hands of many physicians, and had spent all she had, and was not helped at all, but rather had grown worse. In this time, there were limitations. Even today, there are limitations for our physicians. This woman experienced some serious limitation. It said, and was not helped, but had grown worse. I mean, this is taking a toll on her life. It says, after hearing about Jesus, she came up in the crowd behind him and touched his cloak. Now, let's just take a moment here. I want you to get this picture in your mind. Remember, it's a very large crowd and they're pressing together. This woman had to have a sense of frailty, and yet she was able to work her way through the crowd. I don't want you to miss that point. And when she gets up behind him, she can't get in front of him. She can't get off to the side. She can't get his attention. She comes up behind him and touches his cloak. Just a touch of his garment. This is an amazing moment for her. Think about how hard it was for her to get there. And notice how Mark records her feelings. For she thought, if I just touch his garment, I will get well. If I just touch his garments, just make physical contact, if I can just touch them, I know I will get well. The faith that emerges in this woman's life is profound. She has suffered for years, no success from available medical care. All she has left is Jesus. For her, the question was, will he be enough? And for her, that answer was no question in her mind. He will be enough. If I can just touch the garment, I will be well. How is faith for you? What does it look like? What does it sound like? Is it kind of faith like, Santa Claus, where we make a request and wait for Santa to bring something down the chimney, kind of a Santa Claus theology, sort of a mystical theology? Or is your faith one of simple but clearly deep conviction that this woman has? To her, Jesus will be enough. Now in verse 29, again this word occurs 50 times in the Gospel of Mark. Immediately, not in 10 minutes, not in 5 minutes, immediately the flow of her blood was dried up. And she felt it in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Now, in just that very moment, a simple reaching out of her hand to just touch the hem of the garment, and she was healed of her affliction. This must have been an amazing thing for Mark to have witnessed, to have been there, to have seen. But for you and I, we look at this story and we say, this is absolutely amazing. But I want you to understand that faith is an affirmative response to God. It's an affirmative response to Christ. And her affirmative response was, if I can touch his garment, it will be adequate. And it was. Mark recorded the healing, the story, documented it for us in this very moment. There was no doubt in her mind of what Jesus was able to do. I just want that to resonate with you for just a moment. We need to allow that to bring this truth of faith into our hearts and into our minds, because it is so profoundly important. Now, the story gets really interesting here, because we get this word immediately again. It says in verse 30 of Mark 5, immediately Jesus perceived in himself that the power proceeding from him had gone forth. He turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" Now, if you were this woman, that would be quite a shocking thing. But I want you to remember this is a very large crowd, and I want you to remember that it's pressed in tight, and Jesus is searching around for this woman. What a fascinating story. If you were there and you saw this, you would be amazed. Because why would Jesus be trying to find this woman? Why did Jesus insist on finding this person? Why did he need to know her? I just need to pause here and tell you how critical this is in the story. There is a reason and there is a purpose that Jesus needs to find this woman. And he needs it for a very specific reason. And that reason is recorded because it is for you and I as well. I love this part of the story. And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" In other words, they're looking at Jesus and say, "What? You want to know somebody, people are bumping into you, and you want to know." They had no idea the dynamic that had just unfolded. Are you with me on this? They had no sense that in this moment, this woman had been miraculously healed by a touch of Jesus' garment. They did not know that. And so they're kind of putting Jesus in his place here a little bit. You see the crowd pressing in on you, and you say, "Who touched me?" Oh, come on. This is an unreasonable request. They're feeling responsible to find her, but how many people have already touched him? How would they know? This is a real conundrum for the disciples. I find this part of the story absolutely fascinating, especially when they think they're being such a great help, and they have no idea what is going on. Now, you can identify with the woman, you can identify with the disciples, because I'm sure we've all had those moments of trying to help in situations we really know nothing about. You could be one of those people in the crowd who were watching the whole thing and say, "What's wrong with those disciples? And why does this man Jesus want to find this woman?" Now, I find this to be very interesting, because Jesus was not in any way deterred or hesitant to continue his search by the disciples' question. You see, Jesus searched and inquired. He was determined, in spite of what those disciples thought they were doing to help. Now notice verse 32. He looked around to see the woman who had done this. He's searching. He is looking to the face of every single person that is pressed in around him. And he's looking through the first row and the next row, third row, fourth row out. He is looking in the eyes of every one of those people. and he will find her. He knows he will find her. Look, Jesus had a purpose. His words to her could impact her perspective, and more than that, teach us something. We need to learn the lesson here that Jesus is trying to teach to you and to me. Now, let's go to verse 33. But the woman, fearing and trembling, aware of what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. Now, this is the second person to fall at the feet of Jesus in these few minutes. Jairus, and now this woman. And I want you to notice what Scripture says. She spoke the truth. The whole story. 12 years. Doctors trying to do their very best. No success. No solution. I touched your garment and I was made whole. She's telling him the whole story. Nothing is left out. Can I just say there's a lesson here for us to be completely honest in our conversations with Jesus, in our prayers with the Father and the Son, to be completely honest, tell the truth. It is so important to not pretend to be something we are not. Just tell him the truth. That's a great lesson in the story. Look, she was fully healed. She was aware it had happened. Jesus also knew what had happened to her as well. There's no surprises here in the story. But what is amazing is she found the courage to come up and fall at his feet and just say, Jesus, this is what happened. This is who I am. This is what you have done for me. There are 4 thoughts on this verse I want to share with you. And that is the determination that Jesus had to be able to find this woman and speak to her. Here are these 4 points. The first one, Jesus was able to express to the crowd the importance of faith, as he had done with the centurion when he healed his servant. He said, I've never seen faith like this in all of Israel. So here is a lesson of extraordinary faith to impact this multitude and to impact you and me. You see, this was an extraordinary healing from such a fragile faith of this woman who was absolutely desperate. Point number 2. Jesus needed to recognize and acknowledge her personally. This woman was worthy of Jesus' acknowledgement in a society that did not always see women's value, and Jesus always did. Even today, in our culture, this is a struggle. In secular society, it is struggle in churches where women still are not considered worthy of Christ's attention. But Jesus sought her out to recognize her and to acknowledge her personally because she was important to him, as every woman, every man, every child is precious in the eyes of Christ. Number 3, Jesus was able to clarify that this was an act of the Father and the Son. This is not superstition. This is not magic. Faith brought about the healing, and Jesus needed to confirm that with her so there wasn't a mysticism created out of this experience of her healing. Faith brought about the healing. Jesus always worked in connection to his Father's will. Listen to what John wrote, chapter 5, verses 19 and 20. Therefore, Jesus answered in this conversation to others, Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of himself unless it is something he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, these things the Son does in like manner. What happened to this woman, I want you to understand, what happened to this woman was an event by both the Father and the Son. Point number 4. Jesus did this as an opportunity for her to acknowledge the blessing received was more than a physical healing, but it was also a spiritual healing and restoration. That this wasn't just stopping her flow of blood, it was restoring her heart spiritually in a connection with the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And that's why it was so important for Jesus to find her in this crowd that was pressing in. I mean, think about her making her way up, and think about the people that had to move away so that she could fall at his feet and tell him the truth. But I also want you to think about the profound impact this moment had on her life, both physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Faith brings us into a contact with Jesus that involves all of heaven. And this woman personally experienced it by just simply touching the garment itself. Man, that is amazing stuff. It's powerful, isn't it? How is it with you? Is faith a duty? Is it a behavior that, if I do 6 good things today, I can ask Jesus for anything? Or is it just, Jesus, you are my only hope. I am reaching out to you. I have no other hope. And I believe you are my only hope. Is that your faith today? Verse 34. And he said to her, Daughter, your faith has made you well. Did you catch that? Your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. Go in peace. Now, what does he mean by that? Remember, I told you this was a holistic healing. That she is leaving his presence in peace because her heart has been restored. And she is leaving his presence healed of her affliction. Isn't this just a powerful story? It's just such an incredible moment in her life. I have seen others have this experience. God just intervenes in ways that sometimes are so miraculous, so remarkable. It is not magic. It is not mysticism. It is not duty. It is faith. Faith is an affirmative response to God. Yes, to God, I trust you. Yes, to God, I'm coming by faith alone. It is so vitally important. It is actually if I may say, part of the heartbeat of Christianity is a life of faith. So, remember, I told you this was a story in the middle of another story. So, while he was still speaking, they came from the house of the synagogue. I'm sorry, they came from the house of the synagogue official saying, Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any more? Now, we're going to pick this story up next week, so you know what's coming. We have such a contrast here. Jairus is at his feet asking Jesus to come to his home. Jesus is on the way, and on the way to Jairus' home for his daughter, this little girl, to be touched by the hand of Jesus. This woman brings everything to a halt and has a most miraculous moment. Now, what's really important in this story, if you just pause here for just one moment, think of Jairus. Think about his faith. He saw what just happened to this woman as he's walking right along with Jesus. Are you putting this together now? And he sees her healed by just a touch of the garment. And now his daughter has died, and they're still on the way to his house. Next week, we'll pick that story up. It's going to be amazing. The people that had a chance to walk in the presence of Jesus, what a profound blessing. So I want to go to our last slide here, our next to the last slide, if I may. I want to just, if you didn't get a chance to write down Screaming Rock Ministries, I really appreciate Sherry putting a capital S, capital R, capital M, so that you can see it as Screaming Rock Ministry. You can do it small letter or a capital letter. It doesn't matter. It'll work either way. But we want you to go there and take a look. There's several years of collection of presentations. There's part of our scholarship program. There's just so many things, I hope, that are just a spiritual blessing for you. And I hope it enriches your life. I want to go in these last few seconds to our picture. So pause for just a moment and study this picture. Did you see these two pelicans riding over the top of the waves there? Isn't that just like, wow? And you can see the winds blowing the waves, and those pelicans have huge wings, and they're just cruising over the top, watching for fish. Thank you, Sherry. What a blessing. I hope you enjoyed our story. You take care now.